most of mental health conditions and addictions and so on, the pain is already inside. And in fact, it's the attempt not to feel the pain that makes people sick. Then there's the whole adverse childhood experiences list of physical, sexual, emotional abuse, a parent dying, a parent being mentally ill, a parent being addicted, violence in the family, a parent being jailed, a rancorous divorce, neglect. The link between these adverse conditions and mental health problems later on in life, as in the words of one leading British psychologist, is as well established in the scientific literature as the link between smoking and lung cancer. And yet, you go to most psychiatrists, nobody's going to ask you about that stuff. So let's establish our shared respect for the achievements and contributions of Western medicine. We're not talking about that. We're talking about what it misses. So we're talking about the narrowness of its perspective and its ideology, and that narrowness limits its capacity to heal. There is a physiological basis, but that physiology is related to emotions.
It's MAYIM BIALIK'S Breakdown. She's gonna break it down for you, because you know she knows a thing or two. So now she's gonna break down. It's a breakdown. She's gonna break it down.
MAYIM BIALIK'S Breakdown is supported by Rabbit Air.
Jonathan, do you see what I'm holding?
It's a beautiful piece of art.
It's an air purifier disguised as a beautiful piece of art. Jonathan and I both are air purifier users, and we are very, very excited about our new Rabbit Air. Fantastic air purifiers. And this one does happen to be gorgeous. I am one of those people who, if I do not sleep with an air purifier, I will have a runny nose. My kids will have a runny nose. I do not live without my Rabbit Air. And every day, we actually breathe in 2,000 gallons of air. That's a lot of air. And decades of research have shown air pollutants increase the amount and seriousness not only of allergies, like I mentioned, but lung and heart disease and other health problems. Rabbit Air has award-winning air purifiers that are some of the best in the industry. Check out the certified asthma and allergy-friendly A3 air purifier by the Asthma and Allergy Foundation of America. It's scientifically validated for the goal of allergen reduction, reducing airborne allergens like pollens, mold spores, dust, and VOCs. Rabbit Air's award-winning air purifiers with 6-stage HEPA filtration are highly customizable, as you can see by my beautiful one, with interchangeable faceplate design, as you can see by the beautiful wave that I have. Wall mount floor stand, they have 4 custom filtration options like germ defense, pet allergy, odor remover, or toxin absorber filter, and they come with unique features like laser particle sensing, mobile app, and my favorite part, ultra quiet design. Go to rabbitair.com.
That's RABBITAIR.com, or call them 24/7 to speak with a Rabbit Air consultant.
Hi, I'm MAYIM BIALIK.
And I'm Jonathan Cohen. Welcome to our Thursday bite-sized edition of The Breakdown.
This is a very special one. A lot of people have said that not only is this episode that we are giving you a bite-sized version of one of the favorite episodes that we've ever done, many people have said that it's their favorite episode of any show that this guest has ever done. That person is renowned speaker and best-selling author, Dr. Gabor Maté. And if you don't know who he is, I highly recommend you listen to this. He specializes in addiction and stress and trauma and childhood development. His book, The Myth of Normal, I have sung the praises of this book, and Jonathan and I really, really took it to heart. It's like about like the culture that we're all living in that we think is normal in terms of, how many of us have autoimmune disease and how many of us are lonely and taking antidepressants and taking this and taking that. But it really ties together everything and shows really the larger paradigm that we're all living in.
If you've already listened to this episode, what I'm going to tell you is listen again, because there are so many ideas in here that you need to let them soak in. Once is not enough. At least it wasn't for me. So that's the first part. The second part is he touches on what is one of the biggest concepts in medicine today, which is that adverse childhood experiences, when not dealt with and processed, actually are one of the biggest contributors to potential chronic disease in later life. Let that sink in.
And also, in case that sounds depressing, he's also a delightful person to listen to. There's a lot of hope in this. And a lot of people reported that this really allowed them to shift their perspective. So we highly recommend that you listen, enjoy the best moments of Dr. Gabor Maté, and tune in on Tuesday for a brand new full episode of MAYIM BIALIK'S Breakdown, and enjoy this bite-sized goodness.
Break it down.
When I talk about a map to ourselves, I'm talking about a map to the unconscious drives that really motivate so much of our experience, whether we're talking in the realm of politics or the realm of personal relationships, and the experiences that create those unconscious dynamics. You wake up and you say, I've been dreaming. What I thought was reality wasn't reality. David Foster Wallace, at a commencement address that he gave before he committed suicide, these two fish that are swimming along and they're accosted by an older fish who says to them, morning boys, how's the water? And the two fish swim on for a while, and one of them turns to the other one and says, what the hell is water? Right. These things that are so close to us and so big, we don't even see that they're there. We think it's just an inevitable reality, but so many things in this culture that are considered to be normal are completely abnormal from the point of view of human needs. I know it's difficult to go there, but would you rather hear that you got this mysterious, so-called idiopathic, we haven't got a freaking clue what causes this condition, there's nothing we can do about it except to try and control the symptoms? Or would you rather hear that this disease that you got is not the thing with a life of its own, but actually it's a process that's happening in your body in response to your life, in response to what happened to you as a child, in response to how you treat yourself as an adult? And if you understand all that and gain some agency over it, you can actually gain some regulation over that process. People's biggest resource is internal. Whether it's breast cancer, whether it's multiple sclerosis or rheumatoid arthritis, there's been oodles of scientific research showing the relationship between stress and those conditions. And yet, most people that go to a physician, stress, trauma never comes up. When people understand the connection between what happened to them in childhood, the traumas they endured, the stresses they generate for themselves, how is their body saying no when they don't know how to say no, either in work or in personal life, and actually they learn to set some boundaries for themselves, there's actually a change in the physiological process. Why wouldn't there be, given that mind body are one and inseparable? So I don't find that people are that resistant to this message once they understand it. The real problem is that you can go to physicians trained like me in the Western medical tradition, and despite all the science, you never hear this information. We're not talking about causation here. There's multiple causes. We're talking about a contributing factor, but a reversible one. And if you reverse it, that can have a positive impact on the condition. That's the whole point. People who are prone to get chronically ill are ones who tend to put other people's emotional needs compulsively ahead of their own. Number two, they tend to be over-identified with duty, role, and responsibility rather than the needs of the self. They tend to repress healthy anger. They don't know how to set a clear boundary. I worry about people that are very nice. The fourth is this belief that you're responsible for what other people feel and you must never disappoint anybody. You know that the mind and the body can't be separated. The healthy anger is a boundary defense. It says, you're in my space, get out. Whether that's emotional or physical, in fact, or emotions in general, they have one fundamental function, allowing what is healthy and nourishing and supportive, the love, and keep out what is toxic and dangerous. What is the role of our immune system? Keep out what's toxic and let in what's nourishing. Let in the nutriments, the vitamins, the healthy bacteria in the gut. Not only do they have the same function, they're part and parcel of the same apparatus. They're not even separated. So naturally, when people repress themselves emotionally, that's going to have impact on the immune system. How could it be otherwise? It's women in this culture who have to suppress their authenticity even more than men do, and that's why they have more autoimmune disease. That's why they are more prone to non-smoking related cancers. That's why they have much more depression and anxiety. It's not gender determined, it's a culturally determined gender role that determines it. Have you ever met a one-day-old baby that represses their feelings? Okay. In other words, we're born with that capacity. Entry into the world, fully embodied, fully in touch with our gut feelings, fully capable of actually communicating exactly what we're experiencing, not in words, but in gesture and tone and so on. And the time we become adults who repress ourselves, something happens. We got these two needs, the need to attach and to belong to the parents. In fact, without that need being met, the child can't even survive, especially for humans, because we're the most dependent and the least mature, the most helpless for the longest period of time. So that attachment relationship is not negotiable. Attachment is the drive that pulls two bodies together for closeness and proximity so that one can be taken care of or take care of the other. It's hormonal, it's emotional, it's neurological. The healthy development of that organism depends on that attachment. What do we tell parents in this culture when we tell them to sleep train their babies? We tell them not to pick up their kids. Okay? No, you tell a mother baboon not to pick up their kid. You're going to find out what mother rage is all about. So human beings are trained to go against their own instincts. Here's the thing with instincts. They have to be evoked by the environment. Now, this environment doesn't not only not evoke parenting instincts, it actually suppresses them. Because we're told to separate from our kids, giving them timeouts when we don't approve of their behavior. Now, one of the essential needs of children is their freedom to feel all their emotions.
MAYIM BIALIK'S Breakdown is supported by Prose. No one has hair like yours, so why would you settle for mass-produced one-size-fits-all hair care? Part of my hair struggles is that I never knew I had curly hair. I never knew how to take care of it. I never knew how to make it curl. It would just fall weird or get frizzy. Well, since making the switch to made-to-order hair care with Prose, I can say I have never been happier with my hair. Prose makes custom hair care that's effective because the formulas are actually made to order for your unique needs. My name is even on the bottle. Using natural, sustainably sourced ingredients with proven results, Prose customizes every product in your routine, from shampoo to supplements. Prose started by asking me about my hair goals, I want to figure out why my hair is frizzy when it should be curly. Their in-depth consultation also asks you about you as a person. They literally asked me, where do you live? What's your zip code? What do you eat like? What's the weather like where you are? Prose analyzed all my answers and handpicked clean, sustainably sourced ingredients to help me reach my hair goals. I am so excited that I actually feel confident when I do my hair with my Prose products because I know that it's been made for me and I'm happier with how it looks. As a carbon neutral certified B Corp, I also love that Prose is an industry leader in clean and responsible beauty. All their ingredients are sustainably sourced, ethically gathered, and cruelty-free. They're also the first custom beauty brand to go carbon neutral. If you're not 100% positive that Prose is the best hair care you've tried, they'll take the products back, no questions asked. Custom made-to-order hair care with Prose is the key to achieving all your hair goals this year. Take your free in-depth hair consultation, get 15% off your first order today. Go to prose.com/breakdown. That's prose.com/breakdown for your free in-depth hair consultation and 15% off.
MAYIM BIALIK'S Breakdown is supported by Element.
Element is a tasty electrolyte drink mix with everything you need and nothing you don't. That means lots of salt with no sugar. But it's the good kind of salt. It contains a science-backed electrolyte ratio, 1,000 milligrams of sodium, 200 milligrams potassium, 60 milligrams magnesium, with none of the junk. No sugar, no coloring, no artificial ingredients, no gluten, no fillers, no BS. Element is formulated to help anyone with their electrolyte needs and is perfectly suited to folks following a keto, low-carb, or paleo diet. What do electrolytes do? They're very important. They facilitate hundreds of functions in the body, like the conduction of nerve impulses, hormonal regulation, nutrient absorption, and fluid balance. Element can help prevent and eliminate headaches, muscle cramps, fatigue, sleeplessness, and other common symptoms of electrolyte deficiency that you may not even know are caused by electrolyte deficiency. Element is used by everyone from NBA, NFL, and NHL players, Olympic athletes, Navy SEALs, to everyday moms and dads, exercise enthusiasts, and even me and Jonathan. When you sweat, the primary electrolyte lost is sodium, and athletes can lose up to 7 grams a day. When sodium is not replaced, it's common to experience muscle cramps and fatigue. I was a dancer when I was younger, which is something I've talked about here, and I always used to get cramps, headaches, things like that. I didn't even know this existed, and I'm so glad that I know about it now because I don't want to have headaches just because I worked out. Right now, Element is offering our listeners a free sample pack with any purchase. You get 8 single-serving packets free with any Element order. It's a great way to try all 8 flavors or share Element with a salty friend. Get yours at drinklmnt.com/Mayim. This deal is only available through our link. Jonathan, say it again.
You must go to drinklmnt.com/Mayim. Element offers no questions asked refunds. It's totally risk-free. If you don't like it, share it with a salty friend, and they'll give you your money back, no questions asked.
You have nothing to lose.
MAYIM BIALIK'S Breakdown is supported by the new Soulful Jewish Living podcast.
It's the end of the weekend, you can't sleep, your mind's racing with all the things you need to do, and that weird fight that you got in with your friend, and the text you got from your boss about that project that you know is behind but you can't figure out how to solve. You're quickly spiraling, you don't know how to stop. Does that sound familiar? Probably, because we've all been there. And if we're being honest, a lot of us are probably there right now. Start your week right with the latest podcast from Unpacked and the Institute for Jewish Spirituality, Soulful Jewish Living, Mindful Practices for Every Day. Host Rabbi Josh Fagelson will guide you towards practices 2,000 years in the making. And in less than 10 minutes, you can feel more centered, more connected, and with some simple practices that will help you overcome any negative thoughts that come your way. It's the easiest form of self-care you can do for your soul.
Listen to Soulful Jewish Living, Mindful Practices for Every Day on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts.
What would you rather hear? Again, that you've got this sort of mysterious biological, maybe genetic brain disorder, and all we can do is give you these pills for the rest of your life? Or, as a result of what happened to you, you develop certain emotional and psychological ways of being that we call now disease, but actually, if you learn about how you were traumatized and how to deal with that trauma, you can actually ease those conditions. Like, which message would people rather hear? I'm saying that people would rather hear that second message because people would rather have some agency rather than just be passive recipients of health care. Now, again, I'm not even rejecting the use of medications. I've taken them myself, and they've helped. But I think this whole idea that mental health conditions are simple diseases that are biologically based is, according to the research, scientific nonsense. Secondly, even worse, they disempower people. I think people would rather be empowered. It's painful to look at that. But I think, but it's a kind of noble kind of pain, a pain that's what we call growing pains, by the way. Most of mental health conditions and addictions and so on, the pain is already inside. And in fact, it's the attempt not to feel the pain that makes people sick. Then there's the whole adverse childhood experiences list of physical, sexual, emotional abuse, a parent dying, a parent being mentally ill, a parent being addicted, violence in the family, a parent being jailed, a rancorous divorce, neglect. The link between these adverse conditions and mental health problems later on in life, as in the words of one leading British psychologist, is as well established in the scientific literature as the link between smoking and lung cancer. And yet, you go to most psychiatrists, nobody's going to ask you about that stuff. So let's establish our shared respect for the achievements and contributions of Western medicine. We're not talking about that. We're talking about what it misses. Correct. So we're talking about the narrowness of its perspective and its ideology, and that narrowness limits its capacity to heal. There is a physiological basis, but that physiology is related to emotions.
Exactly.
So it's the non-separability of emotions and physiology. So it's the wisdom of the organism that's protected, that represses the anger. But that same protection, that same adaptation, there'll be a price to be paid later on. I don't question most parents' love for their kids. Very few parents don't love their kids. And very few parents don't try and do the best for their kids. But the best is limited, number one, by any traumas that they're still carrying that they haven't worked out. So my wife and I, when we had kids, we hadn't even known that we were traumatized, let alone work out our traumas, which means that our relationship was very conflicted. My trauma would bump against hers, and of course, there'd be rancor. So we loved our kids. We would have done anything for them. But just their own traumas and stresses they couldn't help but absorbing them. And trauma doesn't necessarily mean something terrible happening. Trauma just means a wound. That's the actual meaning of the word. Kids can be wounded, not by terrible things happening, but just by the insecurities and emotional unavailability of the parents. Furthermore, I was a workaholic doctor because the message is a Jewish infant under the Nazis in 1944. The message that I got from the world through the anxieties and terrors of my mother is that I wasn't wanted. Now, if you're not wanted, a wonderful way to deal with it is to try and make yourself important in other people's lives so now they want you all the time, whatever tools you got. Workaholism means that I'd rather be on the job than at home, that I'm fully alive and active and kind of activated when I'm working, but I'm rather listless and depressed at home. And the beeper is always going. Now, what message are my kids getting? That they're not wanted. And that's the last message I ever wanted to give them. So it doesn't take abuse. It just takes stressed parents, especially in a society where people have become so isolated. There's a psychologist that once said to me that children swim in their parents' unconscious like fish in the sea.
Yeah.
So when the parents are upset and stressed because of inequality or economic stress or their own unresolved trauma, it's in the water. That lack of connection with the nurturing parent has a negative effect on the child's brain development. The human brain develops in interaction with the environment. Harvard Center on the Developing Child, they point out that the human brain develops by an ongoing process that begins before birth and continues into adulthood and sets all the conditions for healthy learning and behavior that follow. They say that the most important quality that affects the circuitry of the child's brain, I'm talking about the neurotransmitters, the biochemistry, is the quality of parent-child relationships, especially in the early years. So the emotional relationship with the parent actually programs the physiology of the child's brain. So when you look at what's happening now in our society, with these millions of kids being diagnosed left, right, and center with all manner of diagnoses, the doctors are still holding on to this idea that, these are genetic conditions. The hell, they're genetic conditions. Genes don't change in 30 years, or 20 years, or, what's actually going on is that the loss of that attuned, non-stressed relationship with the adults is affecting the healthy development of the child's brain. And no wonder you're seeing more kids with depression, anxiety, ADHD, and so on. The New York Times and the New Yorker both have had articles in the past 6 months about the alarming rise in childhood suicides. And it's unexplainable. It's not unexplainable, people. It's because of the despair of children at having lost those healthy, essential relationships because of the toxicity of this culture. Platoon means that the one person gets the emotional space of the other and communicates that I get it. Now, we do this automatically until we don't. But if you ever sit on an airplane with a baby, when the baby starts crying, almost everybody goes, "Oh," that awe, that sort of pulling of the face and that sort of empathetic noise that we make, that's attunement. But the emotional response of the child is to share the child's emotional space. When you look at the prison system, most people there are highly traumatized people. Yep. And so what we're fundamentally doing in this society is creating conditions that traumatize people. Yes. Through the pressure on families, through the stress on parents, through the fact that in the United States, 25% of women have to go back to work within 2 weeks of giving birth, which amounts to a massive abandonment of the child, is what it is. It's the only way the child can experience it, through then, not to mention racism and inequality and so on. And then, so we traumatize people then act out their traumas, and all we do then is we lock them up and throw away the key, and we punish them for their trauma. If we have to isolate people from society because there might be dangers, rehabilitate them. You do the work that's necessary. Those killers, they transform. It's trauma that drove them there. When you heal the trauma, they become different people. For the last 12 years of my medical path, I worked with North America's most concentrated area of drug use. It doesn't matter where people come from. When they see that area, it's shocking. So there's thousands of people within a few square block radius injecting and inhaling and ingesting drugs of all kinds. And these are people living with HIV often, hepatitis C, poverty, multiple jailings, and so on. That was the physician at what was at that time North America's first supervised injection site,
Right.
where people could bring their drugs and inject under safer conditions using sterile water and clean needles. I didn't have a single female patient, hundreds of them, in 12 years who had not been sexually abused, and all the men had been severely abused, some of them sexually, some of them in other ways. The studies still show that more of those experiences that you have, the greater your risk of addiction later on in life. By the way, also the greater the risk of autoimmune disease and mental health conditions and so on, but specifically addictions. So that by the time a male child has had 6 of these, sexual, physical, emotional abuse, etc., his risk of becoming an injection-using drug addict is 4,600% greater than that of somebody else. 46-fold increase. Now, why? 2 reasons. First of all, as we said, the brain develops under the impact of the environment, and the circuits in the brain that are prone for addiction
Right.
get affected by that early trauma. Something happened to you. So the addiction wasn't your problem. Your addiction was your attempt to solve the problem. It is a symptom, yes, but it's also an attempt to solve a problem.
Correct.
The problem of pain. My mantra here is not why the addiction, but why the pain. Why didn't you feel alive? Because something happened to you that cut you off from yourself. And that's trauma we're talking about. Something happened to you that gave you a lot of pain that you needed to numb. That's trauma. So that's the essence of addiction, is trauma. It's not genetic. The whole idea of addiction being genetic, which is still the mantra, just scientific nonsense. There's a group of genes that the more of them you have, the more prone you might be to be addicted or to have a mental health condition. At the same time, you can have those same genes and have no condition whatsoever, depending on what the environment does. So what are these genes then? In fact, you can have a gene that under certain circumstances make you more violent, under other circumstances make you less violent. So what do you think the gene is for? The gene is for sensitivity. Our capacity to be affected by the environment. And the more sensitive you are, sincere is from the Latin word, sincere, to feel. The more sensitive you are, the more you feel. Well, the more pain you have, the more likely you want to escape from the pain by numbing yourself. That the more pain you have, the more you have to harden yourself. This is where hardened criminal comes from. They harden themselves because of the trauma. Then you have no empathy and you become ruthless. So that sensitivity can lead you to all kinds of different outcomes depending on what happens in the environment. Where in your life do you have trouble saying no? The second question is, what is the impact on you of your difficulty saying no? Then the third question is, what is the belief behind my difficulty saying no? That tension between attachment and authenticity. Something in you wants to say no, right? But you don't say it for the fear of losing the attachment. As an infant, as a young child, you have no choice in the matter. You have to choose attachment. You don't anymore. You can choose authenticity. The next question then is, who would you be if you knew how to say no? And there's a final question, which is, what are you not saying yes to? When we're so busy not saying no, there's often a yes inside that wants to be expressed, but we don't make space for it. We call that the terrible twos, because we want our kids to be compliant. But actually, that's nature's way of helping to develop the child's will. Because if we don't know how to say no, our yeses don't mean anything at all. What do people need to do? They need to commit to their healing.
There you go.
Not just to talk about it. I'm very good at talking about healing. I'm much more reticent than actually engaging in it. You know, we all are. So this is where we have to just actually make a commitment. You have to ask yourself, what is important to me? There's all kinds of resources out there. And you don't need necessarily any fancy retreat, any big cathartic experience.
Thank you for joining us for this very special Thursday episode of MAYIM BIALIK'S BREAKDOwn.
If you like what you hear, please rate us, review us, and make sure to follow us on Instagram at Bialik Breakdown to tell us your favorite parts of this episode. From our breakdown to the one we hope you never have.
We'll see you next time.
It's MAYIM BIALIK'S breakdown. She's gonna break it down for you, because you know she knows a thing or two. So now she's gonna break